really is an honor to be here tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach of community-oriented making and the team center that I work at and lead a makerspace, working with mostly Latinx students from low-income immigrant backgrounds. And I want to start with a story. About 2.5 years ago when we started, one of the girls that first started with us wasn't interested in science, actually said she hated science, kind of vehemently. But she hadn't heard of making or a makerspace or used any of the technology before, but she really liked art and she really wanted to help with these community projects to reach out to younger students in the community. So she agreed to be part of the makerspace as part of this youth leadership group. And now, 2.5 years later, she's a freshman at Dos Pueblos High School, and she was talking about one of her favorite classes, which is art, and how it helps her to see the world in new ways. And this art class is actually part of the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. And she is part of the first group of students from the Teen Center to get into the really competitive Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. And she told me if it hadn't been for the program, she wouldn't have even applied or considered herself, that she wouldn't have considered applying or thinking about engineering at all. So this is why we do the work that we do, and in general, trying to get students from underrepresented groups interested in STEM. So, in the bigger picture, when I'm talking about underrepresented groups, I'm referring to women and students of color from African American and Latinx backgrounds. And I work mostly with Latina students, and so these Latina young women are representative of the 8% of the US population, and yet only 2% of the workforce in STEM and in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics fields. So this is a problem, and is really important because right now STEM is really well aligned with access, power, and opportunity. A STEM worker on average makes 26% more than a non-STEM worker of the same educational level, and STEM fields are growing at 2 to 3 times the rates of non-STEM fields. So I want these girls and groups from underrepresented backgrounds to have these opportunities. And one way to do that is through the Maker Movement, which is this really powerful way of engaging students in personally relevant projects. And by making, I'm talking about making things, creating things for useful or playful ends. And usually using high-tech tools like 3D printers or microprocessors, but it can also be low-tech, like using cardboard and craft supplies. And it's really exciting because it can draw in all these different people, and people from many different identities can find a place in making. And it's also really well aligned with recommendations from feminist disciplines about how to encourage girls, but also people of color in science. So it being multidisciplinary and drawing on not just different types of science, but also incorporating in art and music or dance and technology, hands-on project-based learning that's inquiry-driven and personally relevant to the students' lives. So it's contextualized learning. It's also in a community, working on collaborative projects with other people locally, and also the idea of the open source collaboration and putting up your designs online, so kind of a global maker community. And having part of that community as mentors or role models that are helping, and then also the growth mindset. So intelligence is not a fixed thing that you're born with, but something that grows over time, and that you're able to learn from failure and try again. So in our program, we build on these ideas as far as we really want to emphasize the creative, expressive side of STEM, and we go one step further, because beyond that, we also want to have youth being change agents in their lives. So we work with the youth leadership group in order to emphasize that these students can use the science and technology we're teaching in order to solve problems that are relevant to them. So they come up with the problems, discuss it as a group, and then solutions, and we use these STEM literacies and knowledge not foregrounded, but to help them solve their problems, so as needed. So the St. George Youth Center is where I work at, and is an amazing after-school site for teens. And they have a lot of different programs on mentoring and homework help, and our makerspace is one program, and as Richard mentioned, is part of UC Links. So it's a place where undergrads come and mentor and also take that information back to the university. And it also has an amazing social action youth leadership group that's there. and we're able to collaborate with them. And actually, if we, it's very important. The youth leadership group and the staff that are at the team center are amazing, and without them, none of the work we do would be possible. So these are some of the projects that we have been working on, and they all are building on that idea of the creative, expressive side of STEM, but also social action projects. So for instance, in the first one, as Erica was mentioning about the remembrance events in Isla Vista, they participated in Blue Night, which was to light up Isla Vista in a way to remember the shooting that happened, but also to create a more safe and beautiful environment for Isla Vista. So that's the top left corner. And then below that, the word cloud came from the youth leadership group, went out and surveyed over 200 residents about what they liked and disliked about Isla Vista. And then in the makerspace, we created positive and negative word clouds about what residents liked and disliked about their community. And then with the positive word cloud, we were able to have them use a microprocessor and conductive paint. And the microprocessor had a sensor that works kind of like touch devices. So when you put your hand on the conductive paint on the words, it was able to trigger the sound effect that the students programmed on. So when you touch the beach, it made the waves crashing, or free birds would yell, "Free birds!" at you. So they invited people to come and participate and interact with this community expression of what is really valuable about Isla Vista. And they said that was really important to them because they knew that people had a certain view of Isla Vista and there were bad things happening, but also there was a lot of things to uphold that was really beautiful about their community. But they didn't want to just leave it at that. They also wanted to address some of the problems. So for the past year, we've been focusing on the issue of noise in Isla Vista, which was one of the things that many residents brought up, both college students and families. And so they've went out this last year and collected over 100 different data points as community scientists on where and when it was loud, and presented this, and also created a map so people could hear different parts of Isla Vista and see what it was like. And then at that town hall, they also invited people to create acoustic panels to make change on a local level in their study room, and over the summer built the acoustic panels to fill the whole wall, and did the pre and post test to show that actually did decrease the amount of reverberation in their study room. So people look at these projects and maker projects in general and say, yeah, it looks like fun, but what are they learning? And we have evidence that they're learning a lot. They're learning about science content, they're learning about sound and how electricity works, they're learning how to code and work with new technologies, and they're learning 21st century literacies, how to collaborate and work together, how to document, how to model what they're doing. And finally, and probably most importantly, they're learning to see themselves in new ways as community activists, as community scientists, and also as capable of and successful at engineering change in their lives and their communities.